let's get up and going. This is our kind of a kickoff meeting for a set of discussions and some work around WebAssembly filters. Really focused in context of Envoy. And so thanks all for coming. There's 12 or 15 or so of you on the call. I suspect we'll have a couple others join. I got a couple of messages from people who have electricity out at the moment with some thunderstorms. So, and some other people sick, about 3 or 4 now. But for those that are here, yeah, please do drop your name into the meeting minutes. There's, understanding now that when we sent this out, that it would go out to so many. I guess I hadn't given a lot of consideration as to much of a formal kickoff, other than just what had been. And so I'll kind of explain the backstory here that there had been, well, for about a year now, some amount of doings with WebAssembly filters in the community. Some of that work had been demonstrated at last year's DockerCon. And so it was demonstrated with console and the fact that it uses an Envoy-based data plane and is capable of, having filters loaded into it. And so about a year ago, there was an effort to create a sample application and show that people can incorporate business logic into their data plane and offload kind of business logic into their data plane. And that particular sample app was doing that. So some of you that are on the call now have advanced that sample application, that sample filter, to be much more generic. So that'll be part of today's discussion. It strikes me that we should also speak to some of the abilities that Meshery has today for working with and interacting with filters, and some of the roadmap focus for what we think might come. And some of that's dependent upon your input, all of you that are on the call. And so we've got a couple of topics queued up. Before we jump into the first topic, is anybody have topics to add or clarifying questions or comments about the scope of the meeting or the kind of part of the goals? I'm looking through the list of names here, and there's a bunch of familiar faces. So all of whom that are on the call have been on other community meetings in the past. So don't be shy, I guess, is one thing. 2 is that some of you haven't seen, what's the best way to go about this? So we definitely have some specific topics. Some of the topics may interest each of you. Some of you might be keen to just be apprised of what Meshery is able to do and how it looks to parlay with each of the service meshes that it manages. On that second note, maybe we should plan for a full demo on what Meshery does the next time that we meet, so we can do a little more justice to it. And part of what's planned. Let me take that note. And so if no one has any other topics to call out for the meeting.
Lee?
Yeah.
Hi, and here, yeah. Haven't been to any of the meetings for a long time.
No.
But I saw this, and WebAssembly is a topic dear to my heart. So I thought I'd pop in to see what this was all about. And I see there's a filter hub mentioned on the meeting minutes. So is filter hub part of Meshery or?
Yeah, that's a good, it's an ill-formed, it's intentionally underformed concept. It's yes is the general answer, although open for feedback and and being influenced. Like it's been so the notion that if Meshery is going to help manage some of these artifacts that are of a service mesh, but also can be independently maintained and built and shared, that well, there does need to be some place for distribution. It doesn't have to be one place, it can be many places. And so to date that concept hasn't been taken very far. Currently, Meshery allows you to load your filters, and it'll let you load those from the CLI or from the UI. It will connect to GitHub if you want it to, and parse through your registry, identify filters. It will let you load those filters up from a remote HTTP source, just a generic HTTP endpoint. And so it just has very basic like CRUD operations for being a filter repository, like an artifact repository in that way. And that's about the extent of it thus far. It's like, and so yeah, I would love, so Ant, it's been a while. Yes, very nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And so do your worst, or please bring your thoughts and get
Okay, yeah, I'll have to drop off very soon, so I just wanted to see what this was about. So next time I'll probably have more time. Also, I'll get some more context.
Yeah, next time we'll also we'll provide some. So I'm going to put there's a couple of future topics here. So one of those is sort of a demo and review of Meshery's current capabilities for filters. Yeah. Yeah, and so there's a couple of contributors that have made the WebAssembly capabilities that Meshery has today possible. So one of those is Gaurav Chadha, who's on the call. Navendu Podacat has no electricity at the moment. There's a handful of folks who've been doing that. Good. Okay. So of the first discussion here, so Samir and Rudraksh. Samir has a use case for a specific behavior that he would like out of a filter. And this has to do with, and so Samir, if it's all right, let's go through your use case.
Yes.
Which I'll share this doc here if this is helpful. There's a use case here. Cool. Yeah. Do you want to tell everybody about it?
Yeah. So this is basically from a we are also using a microservice-based application deployment in our organization. So wherein currently we are utilizing the capability of Azure API management service to do this particular thing, or the thing which is mentioned here basically. But why we do not want to use that is because of the API is going down most of the time, because this is a behavior of Azure. So there are some uncertainty. So most of the time we see this API doesn't work very efficiently. So that is why we have when we planned our infrastructure to move from Azure Web Apps to the Kubernetes workload, then we have decided to go with service mesh capability. Then we have thought of various use cases or how we can get most out of the service meshes. That is where we come across like, the filter capability of ISTO. But currently, like, what I have been doing, so I have been, like, beating around the bush in Envoy proxy. So, like, writing some of the Lua filters, which is not so convenient for me to kind of, go and research, though we can achieve some of these functionality from there. So that is where I just wanted to give a thought, like, if we can achieve this from the like, mastery point of view, because finally, like, this is something which is very uh, close to the heart of ISTO. And when we talk about the mastery, which does manage and which has the capability to, like, visualize how your service mesh to be. So if we can bring in this kind of feature, so which is basically we have the JWT token, wherein if you see, we have couple of information which comes along. So there is a header part wherein it has a particular kind, and from there is a, like, yeah, so there is a provider who actually the issuer who is from the auth0. And when we decrypt this particular thing, okay, so we find this particular header and payload. So what exactly we are trying to do, because we have to do some of the uh, processing in one of the microservice which needs my email ID as well as my like, subject. Okay, so which has to be added to the header and passed on to the microservice, and just remove the ALG or type or kind from the header part, because that is of no more use. And just append this and pass the request to uh, like, next virtual service, or you can say like next Kubernetes service, so that it can do its own work. And also we are again fine graining into, like, how to get only the domain name from the email ID and process it, but that is not in the priority now. So currently what we are, our use cases, get the email ID and get the subject and append it to header, pass it on to the next service.
Rudraksh, do you want to comment on the use case?
Yep, so it seems like you want to do some sort of routing based on the contents of the jot, right?
Yes. So it depends upon the, again, like, the rules, okay, destination rules. So
Yep.
on which it should be applied.
So I guess in the ingress we can handle the routes. I mean, where exactly do we want to handle some of the headers? And when a jot is received, basically I'll talk about the footer. I don't know much about how we care about the routes as of now. So when a jot comes, the filter's role here would be to decrypt it and extract the headers from it. So I need some input on the.
Okay. Yeah. So let me just quickly share my screen, what I have achieved so far. So I'll be able to show you. Okay. So let me know if we can see. Is it visible?
Not yet.
Okay. Now?
There it is.
Okay. Yeah. So So if you can see my screen, just let me make it big. Okay, so I have achieved this so far. So this particularly does the authentication. Okay, so which basically take the issuer, which we have given, and the JWKS URI. Okay, and after that, what happened? So we have done an authorization policy thing. So wherein it only takes the request principals. Okay, so which is already done. And the challenges we are facing is here. Okay, so I'm literally, due to something, it is not working, and this seems to be bit complicated for me, but I'm literally, I have no idea, so I'm just trying out various things. So here what we have done, so this is the envoy function which I have used with the request handle, and then I am fetching this from the body. So this, I didn't find it in envoy, like envoy documentation, and I do not know whether this works or not. And we have tried, it didn't work first time, so we have not tested after that. So this is where maybe I would need.
Yeah, makes sense. And so once the email address and the subject line are,
Yeah.
to help me, so these would be, these are present inside the JOT?
Yeah, these are present inside the body.
Okay. And root reduction maybe.
Yeah, and I don't know how to remove the header part. There are few things from the header which we have to remove. So that is basically these three things. So these three we do not need after the authentication. So once this comes to my ingress, then it one second. Once this comes to my ingress, so now this type JWT has been handled by this particular thing, and it's done the validation, this one. So after that, I don't need those things. So now what I need is, I need something which is in my body here, has to be made available here, and this needs to be deleted from this.
Gotcha. So yeah, and this is an example of the contents of the JWT.
Yes, this is after after you decrypt, this is the one which you get. So how did I do that? Just I went here, jwt.io. And if you give this token here, so it will decrypt it.
Nice.
So this encoding is done via, in the ingress is done via this particular thing with the issuer and the JWKS URI.
Nice. So once those are extracted, it looked like you had example HTTP headers.
Yes, yes. So once these JWT rules, which usually would be like this, and once this is decrypted, so that will be authenticated along with this. If the issue.
Do you have a sample of the entire HTTP request along with the JWT?
1 second, let me just find it out. Currently, I may have it in my office laptop. Maybe I'll bring that up in some time. Just
Okay, so basically, how you can manipulate it in what do you say? What WASM does is it works directly with HTTP packets. So I just had a question to clarify. Like, this token, is it present as the payload for the request,
no,
or is it?
this will be decrypted after it hits my ingress.
No, no, no. You misunderstood. So you have HTTP headers and you have HTTP payload. This is about JOT tokens themselves. This is
Yes,
a fundamental question I had. So these tokens are, is this token, passed along in the body of the request, or is
yes.
it passed as a header?
No, no, this goes as a 1 second. That also I can. This goes as a header.
This goes as a header.
Yes.
Okay. 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 Fine. Fine.
Let me just find out the exact JWT one.
So essentially, your ideal case would be to handle this through the filter itself, right? Like through the UI. Sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to write a filter, something, something like this. This is the Envoy filter. So because I do not understand much about how does it work,
Mm-hmm.
and few manipulation is restricted. Like let's see, I can add the headers, but I cannot delete, I guess, because I don't know, because that is
Over here, I suspect that you are directly working with the HTTP packet, not the JOT.
yes, yes.
So,
So that is what I am trying to tell you. So
right,
once it hits my ingress as an
right,
Envoy proxy, right?
right.
So so this is the proxy, this is what something will be decrypted when it hits my ingress and leaves the envoy of my ingress. So after this only my this this filter will work. Okay, because if you reach another service in a service mesh, you have to go
Right.
via one of the envoy filter, right?
Right, right, right.
So
No,
in that
again, I might be complete. Sorry, please can. Please go ahead.
in that when it leaves that envoy filter, so this is the function which will be happening there.
Right. So when I so yeah, speaking about that, so I'm guessing that HTTP packet after the author whatever is done,
Yes.
does the authentication service generate a new what do you say, a request or forward the same packet?
No, no, no,
So it authenticates it and forwards it, or like how does that?
no. This will be decrypted and it will be forwarded with some of the manipulations I told. Okay, so there is no
Okay,
any
okay,
token
okay,
or anything will be created.
okay, fine. I think I got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh,
So,
so in
Lee,
that case,
the
one thing I'll just give you
right,
more
sure.
clarity. How does it happen? Let me just go here. Yeah, so if you see our authorization architecture, how does it happen? So user first connect to the front end, and then it goes to the auth service, which is authorization. And this authorization auth 0 provides us a JWT token and forwarded this to ISTO ingress. And from there, it happens it validate the request with JWT routes. Then secondly, what we have to do is extract the values from JWT body and adds it to header and pass it to the application. So this is how it happens.
So upon receiving the JOT, it will construct a new HTTP.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay. Okay, then it, yeah, then what you're trying to do should make sense. Okay, yeah, fine, cool.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
nice.
My concern was you were directly trying to manipulate the JOT. So I was just thinking how to, since again, the sort of end goal, at least for the rate, quote unquote, rate limit filter for now, is supposed to be extensibility. How would specifically manipulating the JOT header make sense? So, yeah, your use case, I guess, does make sense, but okay, yeah, cool. I guess I'll come to that in in my topic.
Nice. Yeah, so Samir, subsequent, it is also part of the use case that you, outside of extracting that information from the JOT and passing it along as HTTP or in your HTTP headers, it's also, is part of this also that you would like to route those requests based on the content of that extracted info?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. That currently what we are doing, we are using the path based route. But yeah, that is again, we have to be, because our APIM currently does that. So depending upon the value here, it will send you to the particular, let's say my email service is there, one of the microservice. If it sees an email in the header, then it will send this request to the email microservice.
Nice. Okay. And so, so at the moment, that subsequent routing is already handled by your microservices.
Yes, via ISTO. So we use, yeah.
Oh, okay. You already have existing Istio config that okay, very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that routing isn't happening as logic inside of your microservice, but rather as configuration of the service mesh. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Nice. All right. Good. Rudraksh and Pranav, or anyone else, any other clarifying questions for Samir outside of, I think Samir will get a sample HTTP request. But other than that, early thoughts, Rudraksh and Pranav, it sounds like an early thought from you is, great, the use case makes sense. Of the filter that you've been focused on, this it doesn't fit that mold necessarily, but it's a great use case. And so potentially.
So I cannot promise Samir that he won't have to code anything at all. That's my what do you say, take. So he might need to what do you say? I mean, I guess we can provide functionality, and then okay, I'll just get into when I talk about my topic. I guess it'll be a little more clear.
I can do little bit of coding, but yeah. So
Rudraksh, any other comments?
No.
Good. Good. That sounded confident. Good. So Samir, yeah, the goal there is that you actually that's the goal basically, is that you don't need to do any coding, that there would be a filter that addresses an extensible filter that addresses this use case that allows you to make those configurations from Meshery so that you can supply the logic that you need to from a familiar interface, a friendly
I can
interface.
write a YAML file, so that is
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Fair enough. Let's move along. Pranav.
Okay, I'm up. Hello. Cool. So essentially, and I've been alluding to this for for a while, and I apologize for my questions taking up so much time. But the main thing that, okay, when I started off on this, of course, I was completely new and I didn't really have a grasp of the topic. But as I, continued developing the filter itself, I understood what it was and more of its capability. And the sort of, what do you say, holy grail for a filter would be one filter to rule them all. And that probably won't be possible. But as of now, there is just one rate limit filter, one file. You can pass it a configuration, define the paths you want, paths you have, and as well as the rule you want to apply per path. Now, it sort of, started off as that, and then then I was like, okay, fine. Since it's a filter as of now, why not? I spoke to Lee also about this a couple of days back, and the end goal would be to make some sort of library so that people can sort of, create their own filters, using certain predefined functions or, ways to manipulate HTTP packets from the library. But, the thought of a library was because since it's, what do you say, image hub, right? The goal is to have a hub where people can, sort of create your own filters. And since one filter cannot address each and every, what do you say, feature that a user may want, or each and every manipulation someone would want to perform on the packet, a library is sort of an end goal, kind of. There's a question mark on that. But alongside that, there is also the, the filter itself that's meant to, handle a lot of use cases. For that as well, the configuration format also needs to be set such that, it's easy enough and it's also viable to construct that config and pass it along. So for example, again, I'm coming back to the rate limit filter. Once you define that path, let's say path pull as the rule rate limiter, you can then have, n fields such that you can define, okay, fine. If you find this particular token or this particular key in the jot that comes in, then you can set the limit to 10 or 20 or 30. And like that, you can have n such values. So currently it is crafted for Image Hub. And currently Image Hub only has 3 plan types. There's a personal, enterprise, and I guess one more with I guess 1,000 pull requests or something like that. And the idea is you shouldn't be limited to 3. You should be able to pass in a config that can, let you define 10,000. So the UI also should be able to handle that. Another thing is, as Samir spoke about, routing to specific applications. Another capability that, that should be there, that can be passed to this, to the applying part of, what do you say, the adapters. That would be actually pulling the current list of services and then selecting which service to apply that filter for. So that's another thing that would be really, like, I think it's integral to sort of, get a role. Currently, it's, again, just limited to Image Hub. For those of you who sort of aren't familiar with Image Hub, it's basically just Image Hub itself is a sample application. It aims to mimic Docker Hub in the sense that you can sort of pull, quote unquote images. When you actually pull, nothing really happens. It just sends a request and then the counter goes up on your limit, image pull limit. So the goal is to be able to adapt these filters for any application, any service. And so far, I guess the UI, it's still under active development. I don't know. I'm running out of things to talk here.
So Pranav, jump in and say, let
Yeah.
me jump in.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Thanks for introducing everyone to the Image Hub filter. So a couple and by the way, everyone, there's context for the Image Hub application and the filter that goes along with it. Pranav and Rudraksh have been making it extensible, which is great. Extensible so that it doesn't have hard-coded values in the filter, and that extensible filter is ideally configured from any of Meshry's clients, or any client of Meshry. The two for Meshry right now are Meshry CTL and Meshry UI. And so before we get into Meshry UI, Pranav, the status, and this is, I guess, for Rudraksh as well, but the status of the Meshry adapter for Istio, there's an update, but there's an outstanding PR, I think, that will tie off a lot of the initial work that you guys have done. And that will sufficiently have removed hard coding from the filter. Is that an accurate statement? Like once that PR lands?
That PR should finish work on the backend, and the front end part is still left to be figured out. So after we get the front end part figured out, then we'll say it is complete. So yeah.
So again, the main thing, I guess, Navendu was looking into this, and I was supposed to actually have a meeting with him, was how to get the actual filters from the front end and the config as well to the back end. There is, I think he can comment on this, but I believe there are gRPC calls made, and there is a particular section. Okay, I'll just let him talk about this. If he's not here.
So Navendu is, although I think what you're alluding to is like just the configuration of the filter itself. So, and that we just need a common format for capturing that config and way of exchanging the configuration info. There's kind of two, actually, Utkarsh, do you want to explain the concept of filter configuration from the 2%? Oh, Utkarsh is not. Navendu, maybe if this is familiar enough to you, do you want to explain this? And Navendu had a power outage, so he may not be. Yep. So Pranav, we don't need to go in circles on this particular thing. Like, it sounds like, I guess my question about the filter being extensible at this point, it's externally configurable, and you're not tracking any additional changes on the filter. Is that right?
Yeah, the filter itself currently, no changes over there. Since Samir has requested for manipulation, so I guess adding HTTP headers and deleting them, that could be added to the filter itself. So I guess you could add that as a rule type, if that makes sense.
It might. So yeah, that's something to be analyzed. Like, does this warrant a new filter, or is the existing filter extensible?
So the existing filter can, what do you say? I think it can be done. So he wants all the, so he can specify, I guess, in, like I said, right, you can input for the rate limit thing itself, you can input n values. So similar to that, you can input n headers that you want removed and n headers that you want added. But I'm just thinking of how to take a header value from A and then put it into, from the body to the header. That's just that's something I think I'll think about it and see if there's any viable solution to that. Otherwise, we might need a new filter for that.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense. So, Blake, since last time we spoke about Console's potential native support for WASM filters, any updates there?
Nothing super exciting. So we have kept the code alive in some private branches. It was last working on console 1.9 or yeah, on 1.9. So it probably needs some minor updates to 110. We've had some discussions about supporting it as an experimental feature within console, actually shipping it in, you know, a downloadable GA release. We just have held off on that because we want to make sure that it's clearly messaged between, or as being an experimental feature and not something that like our enterprise customers and the commercial product expect that is, you know, fully supported, that they can rely on for production use. Because we don't, obviously WASM is still pretty young and new and rapidly changing. We don't want people to implement functionality and then something changes and they feel like the rug's been pulled out from under their feet. So it's just more of a support thing from our standpoint of how do we, again, keep, you know, our enterprise customers very clear on what the expectations are for that feature.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. As soon as it's there, in some respects, it might not even matter how it's messaged. As soon as it's there, someone will take advantage of it, and then they'll be upset.
Yeah, I do think the good thing is we have some other use cases internally that look like they might be solved for through WASM filters. So there's some other needs why this might end up being finally mainlined rather than just, you know, there's some interest in the community from a few folks.
Yeah. As we go, yeah, makes sense. As we move forth in here on various use cases and busying ourselves with those, if next, it might, you know, if we get some of your time next time we meet, if there is, or if you just want to send it asynchronously, but if there's pre-experimental guidance as to you know, like suggested tooling or a suggested approach for, or if there are things that we can be testing out of the experimental approach, you know, guide us, because either that might help get you guys some feedback, or we'll know like, hey, don't try this on 110, you know, stay focused on 1.9, use this mechanism for insertion. Yeah.
Yeah, I can look at sharing some of that with you. You know, the things that had changed from the last time you tried it is now we had a more first-class way to configure those filters using console service configuration, the config entries and things. We also had, I think we were looking to support loading the WASM filters, not just from disk, but even from a central HTTP source. And I believe that code's working. I have to go check that as well. But couple nice things. I mean, it was definitely more featureful. So I can maybe get that together, put that in a branch of my personal GitHub and maybe publish a Docker container or something, make that available to you.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Potentially share. Thanks. Yeah, those sound nice. The features that you just mentioned are, yeah, make things a lot more convenient. Share. Branch. And we're cool. Okay. Yeah, I imagine the sensitivity around managing the roadmap for this type of a feature, for considering how young it is. Okay. Well, so Utkarsh isn't here. Maybe and Navindu was on his mobile. His power is out. So this particular conversation here is it's kind of two-parted, and the first part's relatively straightforward, and this is to say that anytime that there's a filter that's to be loaded into a service mesh, there's service mesh specific configuration that needs to be supplied along with the filter. You know, where to load it, where to get the filter from, where to load it, you know, what proxies to put it on, where to insert it into the filter chain. And so there's that type of configuration that needs to be associated to the filter binary. There's a second set of configuration that needs to be captured that's specific to the filter itself. So in the case of the image hub filter, using that example, it needs certain configuration around rate limiting and subscription plans. And that's unique to that filter. And so the format by which that configuration is captured is, I think the first one of those is relatively straightforward for Meshry to capture, and Utkarsh is the individual working on that. I mean, I don't know that there's a lot of questions there. Like that's defined by the service mesh, and so Meshry will just expose an interface to configure the service mesh. For the second class of configuration information that's specific to a filter, well, we probably need further discussion about how that configuration information is bundled with the binaries and how those are potentially stored alongside the binaries. That's configuration. And then it's really that type of config, it would be ideal if Meshry is able to give users a pleasant user, a user interface to visually update the filter's config. So if the filter is doing rate limiting, like a visual interface to be able to change the rate limits, per route or per whatever it does. And so like some amount of commonality in the description of that type of configuration will help. And so as Pranav had alluded to, like a potential goal of having a reusable library to facilitate creating, a set of different filters to achieve different use cases. Many of those filters are going to have common needs, and one of those common needs would be configuration of the filter itself, like what the filter is doing. And so if that configuration is exposed in a common format, that makes it easier for something like Meshry's UI to present input fields to the user. So I'm hoping that makes sense. And one of those, that first class, that should be unlocked fairly shortly. And I guess for Rudraksh and Pranav, that second class, will one of the two of you give an example in JSON of the image hub filter config?
Yeah, so it's on my, I guess if you can navigate to Image Hub, the repo right now, I could point you to the PR and you could perhaps link it here.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I'll let you. Yeah, great. Considering the time, I'll let you provide.
Yeah. Here. Sure. Yeah, I'll do that.
I don't know that we have Piyush on today.
So I just had another query. So since it's going to be in the end, basically a base 64 encoded value, and there is a database as well on Meshry server, right? So I don't know if Navendu understood me correctly, but what he said was that you could store the binary on the database. So is that right? So if you can store that, then alongside that, you could just store the base64 key itself and then decode it and render it as a JSON when you're, what do you say? Again, opening it up to edit it. So
right. That makes sense.
So you don't need to worry about pairing it and how to link them. So if you can just store it in the database, you can just add another, I guess, column with the configs, comma separated or something, and I think that should be good.
Makes a lot of sense. Because you can hydrate and dehydrate, so to speak, that encoded info, and then prepare it for presentation. Yeah. A good place to land part of that discussion is probably in this spec as a common way for Meshry to perform that function.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Good suggestion. Okay, there's a couple of topics we won't get to today. But of the last one that we might, so Gaurav, there's a couple of things to chat through, but as a backdrop, you don't happen to have Meshry running with the filter UI by chance?
Yeah, so I am able to run it, but currently facing some of the issues for implementing the schema. So regarding that, I have also raised a draft here. So I need some of the help in rectifying that where I'm lacking in making some changes in that. So, yeah.
Yep. Is that schema?
Gaurav, sorry, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to if he had it running, could I see the UI? Do you have it running?
No, I don't have it running because it's not
Okay,
giving me any errors, but the changes I want to implement, I'm not getting how to configure it,
I see.
implement it. Yeah.
Okay, we can. I guess we can meet up separately and we can try and get through that. Okay, cool. Please go ahead, Lee. So sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's no. So Gaurav, can you be more specific about the issue that you're facing?
Yeah, sure. So let me share my screen.
Okay.
Yeah, so currently I'm working on adding, so it's not running here. So currently what I'm working is when we click over the filter, so what we want to get is a React JSON schema, so which I was implementing from past few days, but was not able to achieve. So
Okay.
regarding that, I have made few changes and implemented in the implementation. I had made a draft PR for that too.
Nice. Okay, now I see what you're. Yep, that's great. That's great. And so if you go back to the Mesher UI for just a moment, Pranav, I think, is this what you were asking to look at?
Yeah. So currently, okay, I just wanted to know that is this fine? Like I just told Gaurav just go ahead and do this. So when you click on it, there should be like a pop-up that comes with all the previous configurations. Yeah, something like this. So instead of the actual raw JSON over here, it's a YAML, but instead of the raw JSON, you'll get like a list of previous configs. If you have none, there's a button saying new config. You click that, and then that form, that React JSON form that Gaurav just showed, that would pop up. So that is the sort of idea I had and what I wanted to go for. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's about right. I think the Mesher UI itself is getting ready for a bit of an overhaul, and so in some respects, it may not matter exactly, the way that you guys do it. I would suggest. I think that Gaurav, if you visit one of the adapter pages, if any of them are running. And if you recall, there's some cards on the page, like probably instead of it being a modal in which people configure the filter, it's probably similar to one of the management pages of an adapter. That there's a card that would expose the inputs there, but is really rather similar to what you're saying, Pranav. And yeah, the ability to version over time, that will be important. Right now, that's a step.
I wasn't really thinking about versioning. So like, for example, right now you may have, what do you say, one config for, okay, today's, I'm just giving an example. So let's take Image Hub itself. So, I mean, today you're feeling like, okay, I want the rate limits to be 10, 10, 10 each. Everyone should be equal or something like that, some nonsense like that. And you just have a different version of the config. So it, of course, will make the filter behave differently. So depending on the situation and the rule type, and maybe perhaps some quick change you wanted to make or test out something, it's not, I won't say versioning, but since it's a config, you can make the filter behave differently depending on what you want it to do and when. So that was my main intuition. Versioning is pretty important, but my main thing was having different behavior with the same filter. That should be.
Yeah, that's a good, yeah. That's something we need to go right down into the design spec, is to track and understand, you know, when and where a given filter has been applied and what the configuration was at the time that it was applied, which I think is what you're pointing to. And then when someone subsequently applies it somewhere else, if they change that config for that particular instance, we'll need to track what that is as well. And so, yeah, those are considerations, to your point, that are necessary even in advance of versioning the config itself. Like each of those instances in which it was applied, they each would need to track their own revision history. And so, yeah, so we need to, I don't know that we've got any of that in the design spec. That's a good thing to go expand on. Especially in context of what you were just saying, Pranav, about, you know, persisting the encoded config in the database. Like, yes, that, and then that needs to be tracked, not only like the default configuration for each filter, but every time that the filter is applied, what was the config for that application?
So yeah, no. So I was thinking, instead of like, you know, having a default config to go with right off the bat, when you're deploying the filter, you'll get an option to apply a config. So then I know it's a bit tedious as of now, but that would be it would force you to select it. If you don't have any, it's fine. If you have something, then it'll you will be able to apply that config. So that's it.
That unto its own is a default config. Like, what would you show them? Well, something. And if they're null values, then even then, like, the null values or the zero values are a default config, and you do want them. Yeah. But good. Okay. Yeah, Pranav, there's a couple of things to look for from you or others next time about design for that, what that would look like. Let me, as we go to wrap up, because we actually hit the top of the hour.
Yeah.
There's a couple things we didn't get to. So we should verify with Utkarsh. I think he's probably fairly far along here, hopefully. We should make sure to catch up with Navendu and Piyush because it's not just the binary that needs to be supplied, but it's the config as well. So there needs to be a consideration there. Samir will, I think, provide maybe a sample HTTP request or sample.
So he has given me the request in Slack. If Samir is still here, I'll just what do you say, put them on the WASM channel.
Okay.
Or ask Samir to do it.
Perfect. And then we'll look for a follow-up on a number of these items next time we meet, but also probably a quick review of Meshri's current capabilities.
Also, Lee, is this duration of the meeting fine, or do we extend it a bit more? Right now it's 45 minutes, so should we keep it an hour, or let's continue one more time with 45 minutes, see if it fits?
Yeah, we might want to extend it to an hour. If we're going to go over like we just did. I didn't realize that it was only 45 minutes. Yep. Well, good. Anybody have anything else? And Pranav, that's what you were suggesting, is to go ahead and extend it to an hour?
I was suggesting maybe we could do 45 minutes like next week, and even if that goes, into overtime, then we will extend it. That was maybe this was just a one-time thing, just to test the water, sort of, since this is the first meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. What was this scheduled for? Was it an hour or was it 45? Or was it half an hour?
Originally it was half an hour. The meeting was set to 45 minutes, has
Yeah,
gone
so
to an hour.
I'm going to schedule it for an hour for next time. If we can end early,
Okay.
great. If not, we'll do an hour.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. It's been a nice kickoff. See you all in a week. See you on the 21st.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
I guess. Bye.
Bye.